There are very few left-wing people not only allowed in this studio but this building, but this man, honestly, has a brain that says I can see both sides. Matthew Torbitt, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, are you?
I'm good, my friend. On the day, on a lovely spring/summer day, Rachel Thieves, Richard III, stood up and you know, I was under the misapprehension that I'd be able to fill my car with diesel, book a holiday, buy 2 houses, count my money, and everything was fine because there were no tax rises. The truth is, my friend, in reality, and maybe the reality is for the Labour Party, you spent a long time promising everybody everything. We can't even afford the interest on the debts we've got. We seem to spend money on things and not on, I think, on things including people who don't pay in. We're crazily following this mad net zero, I nearly said the wrong word again, that'll cost billions of pounds to the detriment of pensioners and veterans and farmers. And if you don't want to, but just say what you just said about your old man, because that, for me, if you're happy to, sums up entirely what I'm trying to say. It almost goes across the political divide.
No, yeah, there's been a lot of interest in my dad's text this week because I sort of shared it with the online world, and because I thought, what do you say? So my dad texted me the other night. He's not someone that really votes. He's not politically engaged. He's voted a few times, but he's not, you know, he doesn't understand the intricacies of it all, and just sort of plods on. And he texted me to say, I've just been reflecting. He was at work, cleans at a school in Stockport, and he said, I've just been reflecting. He said the Conservatives were utterly hopeless. He says, and now Labour are hopeless. And I'm 63 this year, he said, and I have never worked. He feels that he's never worked so hard and been so worse off. He said, it just makes you feel fed up, to be honest with you. And I've been inundated with messages, first of all, of love and support from my dad, which is really nice. He was made up last night when I was telling him. He couldn't quite get his head around it all. But from people that feel exactly the same. And you know what, Jez, I've said it myself in the last week. I am probably that close now to turning my membership card in. I was talking with a couple of MPs today. I was in Westminster briefly today, and one of who is actually sort of a Starmer loyalist. Starmer was at their wedding, so you know you can't get much more loyalist than Starmer being at your wedding before you were an MP. And they said, apart from Angela Rayner's house building stuff, and apart from the sort of workers' rights stuff, this could be a Tory budget. This could absolutely be a Conservative budget. They do not see, it's you know, there's not even a fag paper you'd get in between them. And because I get to the point of going, what am I part of? What have I joined? You know, this isn't the Labour Party I joined. It's not the Labour Party people expect to represent them.
It's really interesting, actually. I'm fascinated when you talk like that, because there are so few people that are that honest on the left. Let me give you my side of that. You talk about, the name of your party is the Labour Party. For me, it was about the working class man and woman. And I will have this argument with anybody. I spend a large part of my life in Newcastle. Everybody knows that, right? And there aren't any working class people in Newcastle who support the Labour Party. And whether Nigel is or isn't the right person, I genuinely believe that this government, I think Boris Johnson went to the centre and got wrapped up in net zero. I think this lot have gone to the right to get elected. There's this new phrase about uni-party and I'm sort of with you. I can sit here and go, the reality, Labour, is, you know, you sat there and carped from the sidelines, you promised everybody everything. The reality is, and I despise Jeremy Corbyn, but I watched him last night on Sky, and he looked, actually, to me, it was probably one of the most genuine things he'd ever said. He said, I never thought, and you might disagree with everything I believe in, he said, I never thought that I would be part of a party in government, a Labour government, that's slashing welfare and by its own admissions in its document are going to push 50,000 kids into poverty. Now, on the right we can look and go, well, OK, that's the reality of your situation. But we can barely afford the interest on our debts. We talk about an 11 billion black hole if you're Rachel Reeves, and then you give the unions £11 billion worth of pay rises. We've got to do something about defence. Immigration, whether the Labour Party, the Tory Party, Nigel Reform, we had Kemi Badenoch on breakfast, still sitting on the bleeding fence 9 months in, saying, I'm trying to work out what to do. The fact is, whether you like it or not, many issues in this country wind people up. The number one is immigration, and I know it gets dressed up, but if you say to your dad, I suspect to your dad, a Labour voter, maybe not, thanks for working all week cleaning in the college in Stockport. I know you need to see a doctor, but you can't because there's a queue, because there isn't enough money, because I'm afraid if you came into this country, you're going to see a doctor within 24 hours. If you say to your dad, we're going to charge you more tax to pay, I don't know, what did Harry Cole tell me earlier? Poetry courses for Colombian drug prisoners in Colombia. It's madness, man, and I'm with you. You said off air, you actually believe that there's going to be something Americanized happen. I just see the need for a conviction politician who cuts through the BS and says, this is what I stand for. If you vote for me, I will take everybody on and I will do it. I just don't see conviction politicians.
No, we don't.
I don't have it. I don't see it.
We don't have any. We don't have any. And you know, I've been on, I wouldn't even say a journey. I think I'm a pragmatist, right? I voted for Jeremy both times. I joined the Labour Party because of Jeremy Corbyn. I was at uni, I was idealistic, and I thought, yeah, I want a society that cares for us and for other people and looks after the poor and the vulnerable. Jeremy was a nightmare as a leader and a nightmare to work with occasionally when I was working for MPs in his shadow cabinet. However, I want to win and I want to be in power. That doesn't mean lying. That doesn't mean tacking right and trying to out-reform reform. That doesn't mean plunging 50,000 children into poverty. It also doesn't mean going on the media as the Justice Secretary saying, well, the key's in the name, we're the Labour Party, we want to get people back into work. Well, in that
case... Why are you
case,
screwing businesses then?
Well, not just that. If we're the party of work, tell me why 40% of people on benefits are in work if work either isn't paying or people aren't being looked after well enough.
They made it all about growth, and you would admit this to me. I mean, no compliments about the Tories. I've been very honest in this programme. Voted Reform was so alienated by the Tories. But we were the leading economically the leading country in the G7 9 months ago. We are on the bones of our backside, and there can be no reason that a major part of that is it's all about growth. He said it's all about growth. It's all about growth. Small businesses, successful people are closing and leaving this country in droves. Successful businesses employ people who pay tax, and the money permeates down. I get to the point. I was talking to Brendan O'Neill there from Spite. I don't understand if any of these politicians quite understand the depth. Your dad's a prime example. The depth of almost despair in this country right now, because it just doesn't seem to be ever the right priority. That's for me.
We have, since the post-90s, politics is a professionalised industry. And the problem is, on all sides, I will say, the lack of talent in Parliament is there in spades. There is nobody there that I go, that's a future leader, on any side. I like James Cleverly from the other side. I think he's a good, upstanding person. Whether his politics are for other people is another story. I think he's decent. I think he's hard-working. Now, listen, I'd always probably rather a Labour government, although at the minute there doesn't seem to be a difference. But I think we're not in too safe hands with him. But the difference is, I look at people I looked up to and got political in, people like Dennis Skinner. You would never get somebody from a building site now, or even a middle-class profession, a teacher or whatever, getting to age 40 and going, do you know what? I want to represent my community now. You've got it, it's professionalised, it's who you know, it's getting your mates into Parliament. And because of that, it's not just the fact that people are a bit dim in there is a total lack of life experience.
Well, this is really interesting, because one of the big criticisms of the Labour Party is that it's full of what I call professional politicians who've never worked in the world. You've had quite well-documented personal problems. You've come through that. I've been through some stuff. I think you have to bought the T-shirt, messed up, fallen over. There's these kids who have come out of university and got jobs as speechwriters and political analysts and all that, and suddenly, you're right, then suddenly they're an MP. What's that idiot? Is it Torbitt? What's he called?
Colston Bell.
He's about 11, isn't he? He was completely skewered by 2 questions. And I thought to myself, and he's an MP. Yeah, that's where, on the reform side, like it or loathe it, the Rupert Bells of this world, the Richard Tysons of what have gone out and set up businesses and employed people and know a bit about the world. I'm so with you, but I hate to be somebody that sits here and goes, oh my God, but I am beginning to despair.
No, I am.
Of the United Kingdom.
I've today, to the point of tears, I am utterly, regardless of who's in power, the only thing I would say, to almost be fair, is looking at the budget, I don't think we'd be any better off with the Tories in. If
she'll raise taxes in October, mate. She's got to.
50p tax rate, I'm almost certain of it. There'll be a 50p tax rate. She will have to raise taxes, and it will be a sweet spot, as Angela Rayner described it as. I think that the key thing, though, and where reform will do well in this, is trust in politicians couldn't be any lower at the minute. And the problem is because the 4 main unpopular decisions the Labour Party have put forward as policies weren't in the manifesto. You've got the winter fuel cuts. You have the inheritance tax on farmers loophole being closed. That wasn't in the manifesto. We have the welfare reforms today. And there was one other which my mind's gone blank of and I can't remember. But both sides during the election, I called it out on this station, were not being truthful because both sides says we will not raise taxes. Labour caveated that with working
what about
people,
the council
whatever
tax
that meant.
BS that he came out with? Not a penny more.
But the Tories said the same. We won't raise taxes or cut public spending and public infrastructure. That was never going to happen. Either side were going to have to do that. And all that happens is people go, what's the point in a manifesto? What's the point in the politicians? And people look to alternatives. And I do think there is an American style coming to a reckoning coming to this country because if you offer, look at Trump, right? You put yourself up against somebody who's going to defend the establishment and the status quo, which is important in many ways. But Joe Bloggs at home sees the status quo and the establishment as not working for them. And if they've got very little, they're willing to gamble very little because it can't get much worse. On the other side, you've got Nigel or potentially Trump, whichever camp, saying, I'm going to break the whole lot down. Let's start again. You're going to go with that guy because it cannot get much worse for you when you're on 40 hours a week and barely paying the rent.
Can I tell you something? You are always welcome on this show. I mean it. Absolute common sense, and I think that speech transcends what side you're on. I'm so with you that people are really being made to feel eighth rate in my mind, and something's got to give. We have to move on, but it's lovely to have you.
Yes.
Matthew Torbitt, former Labour advisor. Check him out online.